Love this podcast? Support it and sponsor today. Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.
Wavelength.
Just because we're doing our lectures online doesn't mean that we need to then retreat and make life, all about being alone.
Sparking the convos about Adelaide.
I think there's not enough knowledge around the severity of the long-term impacts that a concussion can give you, and it's not really educated enough.
You should be having.
The minimum job search requirements is definitely problematic, and it is up to a computer to decide whether you receive your payments each month.
This is Wavelength on Fresh 92.7.
Welcome back to Wavelength, sparking the convos about Adelaide you should be having. We're your hosts. I'm Maggie and I'm here with Cass.
Hello everyone. I hope you've all had a gorgeous week. Before we jump in, we do need to acknowledge that we're recording Wavelength on the land of the Kaurna people and the Adelaide Plains and pay respect to the elders past and present.
We recognise and respect their cultural heritage, beliefs and relationship with the land. We acknowledge that they are of continuing importance to the Kaurna people living today. And we also extend that respect to other Aboriginal language groups and other First Nations. Well, it has been a big week. We've had the Women's World Cup, which has really captured the nation in a really great way, even though the Matildas did lose to England on Wednesday. It's really propelled women's sport in a really fantastic way.
That's right. I really don't think that I've seen Australia rally behind a sporting event like this in my 22 years of being here. 11.5 million Australians were watching the event on Wednesday, meaning that 43% of Australia were tuning in. Even though we haven't gone through the finals, it's still a massive event for soccer and for women.
It's so amazing. It's crazy to look at the comparison of like the Women's World Cup 7 years ago as compared to today. Like, it's just blown up so much and there's still such a long way to go, but it means we're on the right track, which is great.
Absolutely.
And honestly, I could talk about this all episode, but we do have some great stories for you this week. We're discussing the See the Signs campaign, which talks about coercive control and domestic abuse relationships.
Then later on, Liliana talks us through if Australia should be getting a new Disneyland, and Ben cheers us up in heaps good news.
But before all of that, Liliana is speaking with Andrew Rogers, an entrepreneur in Adelaide who has designed an innovative product which helps with fire safety.
Liliana, take it away.
Wavelength on Fresh 92.7.
Andrew, you have been involved in design for many years, starting with a Bachelor of Industrial Design at the University of South Australia in 1984, and then having such honours as being appointed State Chapter Councillor for the Design Institute of Australia in 2022, and member of the Steering Committee for the Adelaide Design Network in the same year. What sparked your passion for design, and what has your journey taught you thus far?
One of the things that really sparked my passion for design was when I first heard about it in high school. And I was very lucky to have a design department in our high school. And I didn't realise that you could actually get a job doing this. I always enjoyed taking things apart, making things, inventing things and designing things. And I think I was really privileged to have a ex-qualified industrial designer as my high school design teacher, and he really inspired me to pursue this as a career.
Arid Design has recently created a groundbreaking product that has already made a significant impact on fire safety and protection in Australia, named the MBAR Argus. What are your hopes for the impact of this product?
The MBAR Argus is a really exciting product. It's been invented by a man called Graham Paul, who's had a lot of experience with the CFS and the emergency services. He saw a need for an automated firefighting system. The Argus system, as I said, is his invention, and what I've done is I've taken his invention and turned it into a product that can be rolled out as a mass-produced product. So we've taken it from what was essentially a prototype where there was a number of those made. We've now turned it into a fully manufactured product. Our hopes are that any household that is put in a situation that's surrounded by potential fires has one of these systems in place, which gives the homeowners the safety, security to be able to leave their home and let the firefighting system fight the fire, and then they can go and be comfortably in another location away from danger and let the firefighting be done automatically.
How quickly do you hope for this product to actually become something that is just standard in all households?
That's our dream. The biggest problem with this is uptake. So people understanding that having an automated system like this means that they can safely walk away from their home. It means that we could potentially save lives. My hope is that if every house that is in a bushfire situation can have one of these, It means that there may be one or two lives, it doesn't matter how few, just if one life is saved by the fact that the person has the confidence to leave their home and go to safety, even if the house does burn, that has created a benefit in that person's felt that they can leave. I think that bushfires are something that are devastating, and in Australia it's something that we really need to be aware of. So I would like to see them rolled out very, very quickly.
What products are you currently working on?
At the moment I have about 4 or 5 projects, which is not uncommon. One is a facelift product for the beauty industry. I designed the original product for Zahav, which is a South Australian company, about 15 years ago. We're now just going through a reiteration of that to update it, incorporating a computer system in it so that it can be more automated. And Yaffa is hoping to be able to sell that around Australia and perhaps export it. I'm also working on a product for horticultural, where we're looking at monitoring and understanding water usage in farm areas and farm equipment and horticulture. This is an automated system which sits in a vineyard or in an orchard to monitor the water and sends information to the cloud. One of the other projects that I'm working on include work in solar, so understanding solar energy, how solar energy can be used and incorporated into the products. We can bring as much energy into the product without having to have remote connections. It's not just about harvesting energy, it's about making it easy to install products. Another product is even a remote shower timer to reduce wastage of water, and also working on some medical products, including products for eye surgery.
So what's next for Arid Designs?
That's the exciting thing about my job. I never really know what's going to happen next. Every time a new customer walks in the door, I can be always excited because they always come up with new and interesting things for me to look at. What I really look forward to is ensuring that what we do is make a difference.
Sparking the convos about Adelaide you should be having. Wavelength on Fresh 92.7.
Thanks for that, Liliana and Andrew. After the break, Cass explores the See the Signs campaign. If you want to hear more Wavelength, check out the podcast on Spotify. It has all of our old episodes on there. You're listening to Fresh 92.7, the beat of Adelaide. Wavelength.
Welcome back to Wavelength, sparking the convos about Adelaide you should be having. The See the Signs campaign was made by the SA government to educate and spread awareness of coercive control in relationships. I spoke with Gabrielle Canny from the Legal Commission right here in SA to explore more.
Wavelength on Fresh 92.7.
Thank you so much for joining us tonight. If you could please start by introducing yourself and what your role is to our listeners.
Thank you very much for having me. My name is Gabrielle Canny. I'm the CEO of the Legal Services Commission, which is an organisation set up by an Act of Parliament to provide access to justice in South Australia.
For our listeners who may not be aware of the campaign, what is See the Signs and what is coercive control?
The campaign, See the Signs, is a way of informing the public about an insidious behaviours called coercive control. So these are behaviours that developed often in a relationship that sees controlling behaviour by one person against the other person in the relationship.
What are the warning signs people should look for in relationships?
I think people often know, they get a gut feeling that things just aren't right. Surely these behaviours are not in a regular relationship. But specifically, making it hard to see your friends or family, really discouraging those sort of visits. Always needing to know where you are and what you're doing. That's not necessary in a healthy relationship. Telling you what you can or you can't wear, or where you can go or where you can't go. Not letting you have control of your own money or where you work. And of course, a really typical one, checking your phone, your computer and your social media accounts.
What should you do if you know someone who's experiencing coercive control in their relationship?
If you've seen those signs, if you know someone or even just begin to suspect that somebody is affected, it's good to talk to the person quietly, on their own, away from the relationship, and just say, look, things don't seem to be quite right. Do you want some help? Now, if that person says, yeah, I wouldn't mind some more information or something, then there's a free legal helpline, 1300 366 424. But if you think, look, I'm not well informed enough to actually have a chat to the person concerned, you can still get some information for your own benefit as well by, again, ringing that free legal helpline. Listeners can access help on actually any legal issue, and particularly in relation to coercive control, through the free services that the Legal Services Commission provides. So there's the legal helpline, there's a web chat service, there's like a 24-hour service where you can check up on what the law is and how it applies to you. So there's lots of different ways to do it. But what I say to everybody is, if you could just make the phone call, you will be better informed as a result of it. We have the phone, free legal helpline is answered by lawyers Monday to Friday within work hours. So you get straight onto a lawyer. Now, the obligation of that lawyer is to keep completely confidential everything you say. So that's the same as if the lawyer is out in private legal practice. So they'll listen to what you've got to say. They will try and help you to take the next step. For those people that are really sort of in a very difficult situation, it might mean that they need what's called an intervention order. So that's an order of the magistrate's court saying that someone has to stop the behaviours or stay away from the other party. But if you make the call to the free legal helpline, 1300 366 424, those lawyers can immediately set you on the right path. Domestic and family violence is a scourge in this country, and sadly, we're all too familiar with those appalling statistics that on average 1 woman per week is murdered by her current or former partner. So Legal Services is proud of the work that we're doing and of the campaign that we've been running, and we acknowledge the significant amount of work that is occurring across government in tackling this horrible form of domestic abuse. We know that many people who have experienced coercive control, particularly women, don't necessarily seek help unless they have experienced physical or sexual forms of abuse. Community at large needs to be aware that coercive control is an insidious form of abuse that can often be a precursor to physical or sexual violence. The clear message is that behaviours of coercive control are unacceptable, but there is help available. Immediate help to stop the behaviour can be accessed through an intervention order. That order is a legal measure designed to protect the applicant from various forms of harm, including coercive control. There does not need to be any criminal charges laid by police for an intervention order to be granted.
Sparking the convos about Adelaide you should be having. Wavelength on Fresh 92.7.
Thanks for that, Cass and Gabrielle. You have Wavelength all the way till 7 p.m. Keep it on Fresh.
Wavelength.
Welcome back to Wavelength. Just before the break, we spoke with Gabrielle Canny about the See the Signs campaign. Up next, Marcus talks with Dr. Vincenzo Libri, an organisational psychologist, about coercive control in relationships and in the workplace.
Wavelength on Fresh 92.7.
Vincenzo, thank you for being with us on Wavelength. Just wanted to know, from a psychological perspective, what is coercive control?
Well, hello, Marco. Good afternoon, and good afternoon to your listeners. Thank you for having me on. Look, coercive control is something that is not new. It is a form of abuse, particularly when we talk about coercive control in relationships. And, there's different signs. It is a pattern of behaviour where one individual tries to control the behaviours of another. And when we think about relationships and we think about domestic abuse, we usually see a male trying to control a female in what they do and how they do it. They might be seeking to isolate their wife or girlfriend from their support system, such as sisters or friends. They'll monitor how their partner behaves and who they talk to. They'll look at their phones. They'll restrict freedom. There's a lot of ways that they engage in this type of coercive control. And it is a really strong element of manipulation and really putting guilt on that individual as well, so they can comply to the manipulation of that individual.
Vincenzo, you have a lot of experience being an organizational psychologist, so can you tell us more about coercive control in the workplace?
Yeah, that's interesting, Marco, because in a workplace, coercive control, like in relationships, is about power and the elements of power and who has the power. But of course, in a workplace, it could be two males where one male is coercively controlling another. And so that can be physical. In other words, they might use their body to physically threaten or control a subordinate's behaviour. They'll be deceptive. They might not tell that person the whole truth or lead them down the garden path, as we'd say, and try and show them up in the workplace to make that person look bad. They can manipulate the situation and manipulate the group of people. In other words, they may walk past the person and ignore them altogether when it's just that person and themselves, but then in a group, talk to that person and appear that they're quite social, friendly around that person. And unfortunately, we still live with sexual harassment in the workplace, and that's where an individual that does have power in the workplace over a subordinate might manipulate that individual into unwanted sexual behaviour. You know, the good thing is that I think as organisations, we are really focused, particularly organisational psychologists, we are really focused on the well-being of people at work. I've always said to all of my clients that no one goes to work to be humiliated or to be physically abused or to be psychologically abused. No one gets paid enough for that. And so it's really important that all workplaces are aware of it and have policies and procedures to deal with it. And have a mechanism where if someone is being coercively controlled, that they have a pathway to deal with that and are supported through that pathway. That is very important.
Thank you very much, Vincenzo, and thank you for being on Wavelength.
Marco, it's an absolute pleasure. Thank you.
Back to you. Ciao for now.
Sparking the convos about Adelaide you should be having. Wavelength on Fresh 92.7.
Thank you so much for that, Marcus. Right after the break, we talk about if Australia could be getting a Disneyland. Don't go anywhere. You're listening to Wavelength on Fresh 92.7, the beat of Adelaide.
Wavelength. Welcome back to Wavelength. Thank you so much for joining us, Fresh fam. Every couple of years we hear talk that Australia could be getting a Disneyland. So to learn more, Liliana takes you through it.
Wavelength explains on Fresh 92.7.
Could the happiest place on earth be coming down under? Following cities such as California, Florida, Shanghai, Tokyo, Paris and Hong Kong, South Australia or Victoria could be next to have our own Disneyland. A push for a Disneyland in Australia began almost 50 years ago when a private company tried to entice the Walt Disney Corporation to start the construction progress on a new park in the Gold Coast suburb of Coomera. Then in the 90s, the Queensland government came on board as a separate interested party, with representatives even meeting with the then CEO of Disney, Michael Eisner, before he ultimately decided the next Disneyland should be in China. But now Melbourne Lord Mayor Sally Capp has made public her desire for Disneyland Down Under to be in Victoria. She explains, as Australia's capital city of fun, of course, we should have a Disneyland theme park in Melbourne. We've even got the perfect spot for it, Fisherman's Bend. Following prominent businessman Warren Randall initially making the push to bring the happiest place on earth to Australia in 2022, the owner of wineries in Seppetsfield and Penny Hills said he would be open to offering part of his extensive McLaren Vale land holdings for a site. Given there has been no official confirmation from the Walt Disney Corporation on a Disneyland in Australia, we can't imagine the gates to a new park will be opening anytime soon. However, the prime piece of land located north of Geelong near Avalon Airport that is being floated as a potential site has already been earmarked for an undisclosed entertainment precinct. Non-executive director of Linfox, David Fox, also confirmed there's an entertainment precinct that we've defined. I wouldn't say for a Disneyland at this moment in time, but anything's possible. Unfortunately for fans, even if and when a Disneyland in Australia is confirmed, it will take at least 5 years for even the first stages of the park to be opened. But if Australia did become home to the next park, it would be a major boost to the nation's tourism sector. So keep your fingers crossed, Australia. I know I will be.
Sparking the convos about Adelaide you should be having. Wavelength on Fresh 92.7.
Up next, we have heaps good news. You're listening to Wavelength on Fresh. Let's jump right back into the jams.
Wavelength.
You're here on Fresh 92.7 listening to Wavelength, and it's that time of the episode. It's heaps good news.
Ben, take it away.
I know there's gonna be heaps good news on Wavelength.
Well, it has been 29 long years, but the wait might finally be over for Adelaide to home elephants again at the much-loved Monado Safari Park. Comes as 3 Asian elephants currently residing at Perth Zoo and Auckland Zoo are on the search for a new home. To create a happy and long-lasting environment for the mammals, Monado Safari Park have raised a goal of $2,025,000 where the elephants Burma, Permai and Puchamas will live. So far they've raised a staggering $666,474 in just over 2 weeks. Monado and African lion McKenna have also welcomed a new cub to the zoo recently. Bookmark Creek, a creek connecting to the Murray River, has found Murray cod and spangled perch in its waters for the first time in 12 years. A regular fish survey carried out near Renmark, where Bookmark Creek is situated, found the particular species of fish. It is believed that they found their way to the creek as a result of this year's floods. Department of Environment and Water Project Manager Andy Harrison said this was an encouraging sign that conditions were improving and a good step to the habitat restoration, and would hopefully allow the fish to move more freely. Commuters travelling on the Gawler train line can finally have some peace of mind knowing that the last train out of a fleet of 10 electric trains have now been released. Sport lover or not, how could you not be captivated by the Matildas' performance at this year's Women's World Cup in Australia and New Zealand? The Matildas have finished the World Cup campaign on home soil with the best result at this tournament for an Australian team, male or female, and have now amassed an even bigger following on Instagram than the Socceroos. It is without a doubt that the 2023 FIFA Women's World Cup brought the nation together like we haven't seen before, and this is only the beginning for grassroots soccer for our nation.
Spiking the convos about Adelaide, you should be having Wavelength on Fresh 92.7.
Thanks for that, Ben. And that brings us to the end of the show tonight. Thank you so much for listening.
Make sure you're subscribed to the Wavelength podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere else you get your podcasts. You can listen back to our old episodes right now, and tonight's episode will be up soon. That's officially it from us tonight.
If you want to have your say about our station, head to fresh92.com.au and fill out our refresh survey to help make Fresh the best station it can be, and a chance to win $250 cash. Right after us, Deep with Easy G comes into the studio. Keep it on Fresh.
Love this podcast? Support it and sponsor today. Simply head to AuscastNetwork.com for details.